Good day, everyone. So, this is Miss Erlinda Sherte. Okay, I'm a part-time college instructor at Pambayang Kolehiyo ng Maguban. Okay, so for today, we're going to discuss this one: key terms and concepts in managing and implementing standards-based grammar teaching. Before we start, let's have first this line. Says your grammar is a reflection of your image. Good or bad, you have made an impression, and like all impressions, you are in total control. So that is according to Jeffrey Gitomer. And here are the list of learning objectives that you must be learned after this lesson. The first one discussed the fundamental terms and concepts associated to the teaching and assessing of grammar. And lastly, shared the implications of one's knowledge of key concepts in the teaching learning process. So, your test: make the following active sentences into passive. Then, your classmates will give you feedback into your sentences. Write your answers into comment section. Alright, so you have to do that. Okay, you already do that. So this is just a refreshment before we continue our lesson. So we have the active sentences wherein you're going to transpose it into its passive voice or sentences. And then there is also the feedback, okay? And then after transposing that into passive sentences, then of course you will be giving your feedback, okay? After you transpose it into its passive voice. Now, so let's dig what is grammar. Alright, so grammar, it is more than just form. There should be meaning in what we form so we can use it appropriately in the right context to help us get the message across. Grammar is also the ability, okay? Ability needs to be accurate, meaningful, and appropriate at the same time. Well, maybe other teachers have quite different views of grammar. It should be noted that grammar knowledge does not just relate to accuracy and the components of meaning, which is the semantics, and use, which is the pragmatics, are important parts of grammar knowledge. So, would you characterize your grammar knowledge as mostly explicit or implicit, or a combination of both explicit and implicit? So, thinking about your own understanding of English grammar, okay, you have to give your insights regarding. So, let's dig deeper. All right. So, as we move forward to this course, the teaching and assessment of grammar, so you must remember these key terms and concepts in managing and implementing standard-based grammar. So implementing a variety of standards-based teaching strategies and techniques for teaching grammar in the development and integration of English skills is important. So when we say standard, of course, it is the regularization of the grammar, of course, the spelling, the language usage, and net to minimal desirability or interchangeability. Teaching and learning a language serves as a deliberating factor because it educates people in what language and linguistic manners are all about. Hence, we need to study the difference of it or its different key terms and concepts, of course, in studying grammar. So we have here grammar and grammaring. Okay, so later you will be learning what is the difference between grammar and grammaring. The grammar is what one knows about a language, the phonology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. While language skills are what we do with language, including speaking, listening, writing, and reading. So, what we know about the language and what we do with the language had sparked controversies about their blurry boundaries. So that was according to Ben Hema on the year 2015. So what are these controversies? These controversies resulted in the development of different models that accounted for grammar differently. Grammar was then considered a method of teaching and learning a language in what we called grammar translation approach, which viewed grammar as the core of the language. However, the notion of grammar has changed with a shift from philology to linguistics. The outbursts of modern linguistics described grammar as a system of structures, besides vocabulary and pronunciation. And the shift from structuralism to transformational grammar has become a system of rules every native speaker of a language acquired and then later on described as competence. So according to Lerzen Freeman on the year 2001, he gave a convincing argument on how grammar should be treated. She even postulated gramming to be the fifth skill together with listening, speaking, reading, and writing as our four macro skills. So she added this, okay, to be brilliant with those skills and referred to gramming as the ability to accurately, meaningfully, and appropriately use grammar structures. So far, grammar is much more than knowing rules, though it is part of the construct. Gramming involves sensitivity to usage because grammar is, of course, more flexible than we think. And every time we speak or write, we always consciously or unconsciously involve ourselves in doing grammar. It is simply a set of rules for memorization. Rather, the goal of learners should be in the development of a skill and conceive grammar in its active and, of course, to its progressive sense. So now, let's take grammaticalizing or grammaticalization. So, what is about this? Grammaticalization is defined as a development from lexical to grammatical forms and from grammatical to even more grammatical forms. So that as according to World Lexicon of Grammaticalization on the year 2002. French linguist Antoine Millet introduced the concept of grammaticalization in his 1912 study, L'Evolution des Formes Grammaticales, where grammaticalization is described as the process by which grammar is created according to Croft 2006, or the study of this process. It is the language process change by which words representing objects and actions like nouns and verbs, okay, as what we see on the given examples later, okay, become grammatical markers. So we have the affixes and prepositions and etc., which results in the creation of function words through a process other than deriving them from existing bound and inflectional constructions, but instead derive them from content words. So, meaning to say, grammaticalization involves the reduction and increased independency. Reduction, also known as phonetic erosion or phonological reduction, which is an expression in linguistics that loses phonetic substance if it undergoes grammaticalization. So let's take the given examples. The first one going to, which is verb, and then it could be also written when we apply grammaticalization to gonna, okay, and then it turns auxiliary. The second one, because or cause. The third one, that, the word that, which is demonstrative, and then that, which is complementizer, as in, for demonstrative, I saw that, he went there. Okay, so that is demonstrative. The functional use of the word that in that sentence is demonstrative. How about complementizer? So this one, complementizer, I saw that he went there. Okay, the word that is only complementing, okay, that he saw. Number four, I will see you later. And then I am gonna see you later. Okay, so you may see, okay, you may see clearly the application of grammaticalization. And for the fifth, my friends will be there this evening. Okay, so my friends will be there this evening. We also have the concept of Klein. All right. So, basic to work on grammaticalization is the concept of a Klein. Okay, so that was according to Halliday 1961 for an early use of this term. So, from the point of view of change, forms do not shift abruptly from one category to another, but goes through a series of small transitions that tend to be similar in type across languages. So, for example, a lexical noun like back that expresses a body part comes to stand for a spatial relationship in or at the back of, and is susceptible to becoming an adverb. All right, and perhaps eventually a preposition and even case affix. And then the form is comparable to back of, which is the house. In English, recur all over the world in different languages. So the potential for change from lexical noun to relational phrase to adverb and preposition is of course even perhaps to a case affix is an example of what we mean we mean by Klein. So therefore, Klein, this is a metaphor, okay, metaphor or symbol for empirical observation, meaning to say, okay, a symbol for the first hand experience, all right, that cross-linguistically forms tend to undergo same kinds of changes. And for example, a lexical noun like back that expresses a body part comes to stand for a spatial relationship in at the back. Okay, so that is what I already read a while ago, and is susceptible to becoming an adverb and perhaps eventually a preposition and even a case affix. All right. So according to Bollinger, 1980, the model auxiliary system of English is undergoing wholesale reorganization. So indeed, in a recent study by Craig 1998, he observes that have get to for the expression of necessity and or obligation is one of the biggest success stories in English grammar of the last century. And such claims suggest that synchronic data spanning several generations in apparent time may provide insight into the mechanisms underlying ongoing grammaticalization process in this area of grammar. So, talking with the expansion and reduction, so still grammaticalization is sometimes conceived of as expansion, meaning to say, okay, nilalawakan natin. Instead of having this specific kind of words, okay, we can expand it, okay, expand, okay. And then, so that was according to Himmelman 2004. Sometimes as reduction, okay, like Lemon 1995, and also this study conducted by Fisher on the year 2007. So expansion models of grammaticalization observe is that as a construction ages, it may increase its collocational range, like the development of BE going to as a future marker in English, which first located with the action verbs before extension to statives, and aspects of it, which is the pragmatic or semantic function. Okay, so either pragmatic or semantic function, like the development of epistemic modality in the use of will in examples such as voice will be voice. So, when we say reduction model, so of course this is a model of grammaticalization tend to focus on form. Okay, aside from that, in a particularly change of something, specifically increase informal dependency and phonetic attrition. So studies on grammaticalization have often focused on isolated linguistic forms. It has frequently been emphasized, however, that grammaticalization not only affects single words or morphemes, but often also larger structures or constructions in the sense of fixed sequences. And of course, to further elaborate grammaticalization theory as little, all right, to the insights of traditional historical linguistics, despite purporting to offer a new way of looking at data and concerning grammatical forms. So still one thing that grammaticalization definitely has gotten right in the recent years is the emphasis on constructions and on forms in actual use and not in the abstract. So that is, it has been realized that it is not enough simply to say, for instance, that a body part has become a preposition like head and then it eventually meant on top of. Okay, but rather one must recognize that it is the head in a particular collocation, like at the head of that has viewed the preposition, or that have, the word have, turning into exist, all right? Which is not necessarily just a random semantic shift, but rather in one that happens in the context of adverbials. So this is a big step forward since it takes semantic change especially out of the realm of the purely lexical and places it into the pragmatic domain, deriving changes from inferencing and the like that are possible of words in constructions with other words and of course in actual contextually geared, okay, usage. Now let's proceed to error correction versus feedback. All right, so mistakes usually refer to this leaps students commit, which they can correct themselves once pointed out to them. All right. So, even that, okay, when it comes to errors, okay, so these are mistakes which these students cannot correct themselves and therefore need an explanation. All right. When teachers respond to errors, it should be viewed as teachers giving feedback, all right? Helping students to reshape their knowledge than telling them outrightly they are wrong. The teacher's reaction towards errors students have committed is very important, all right? So we have a positive feedback, which means confirms a student's response correctness. And a negative feedback, which is the error correction, corrects the faulty language behavior of the students. So for examples, in confirmation, I like how you pronounce X, all right? And then for number two, praise, the word is amazing, bravo, and excellent. Okay, so those are some examples of words we use when we are praising someone, especially our students. So in number three, we have a teacher's request to repeat. For example, teacher applauds his students in front of the class. We also have this negative feedback, indirect and implicit strategies. So recasting or recast. Student, yesterday I go shopping. The teacher, oh, yesterday I also went shopping. All right. And for clarification request, excuse me. Okay, so that is one thing, okay, how we use those, okay, feedbacking. We also have these direct or explicit strategies like correct answer feedback. Just like, oh, you mean? Or you should say, and of course, the correct verb form. Okay, something like that. We also have the guided feedback elicitation techniques. Okay, the first one is the metalinguistic feedback, where the teacher asks a question and or provides a comment or information related to the utterance of the student without giving the correct form. So for example, is it masculine? Or is that how you say in English? And do you say it that way? So teachers request to repeat with corrective intent. Now let's proceed to spoken versus written grammar. Okay, so of course, upon reading the title, we already know, okay, what is the difference between spoken and written, especially when we are pertaining into grammar. So the difference between spoken and written grammar is like an argument, formal and informal grammar. Although there are disputes that prove that spoken grammar doesn't really seem to exist technically because it is essentially the same as the written grammar. So when we say spoken grammar, it has distinct approach from one, okay, from the one being used in written grammar. And this distinction is practically due to the fact that we don't speak the way we write. Of course, the way we speak really differ the way we write, because there are those kinds of individual who are really good in speaking, okay, speaking orally, speaking publicly, and yet they cannot even think well, okay, if they are going to write. And in contrast, there are those kind of individual wherein they can think a lot of ideas, think a lot of informations. There are lots of informations running on their heads, okay, when writing. Yet, if they come to talk, okay, to communicate with someone else, they can't even speak out, okay? They can't vocalize what they want to tell. All right, so that is. And of course, in spoken grammar, okay, there are contradictions such as I don't, etc., okay, are allowed but are strictly not appropriate for written grammar. So, while the inclusion of Islam words or colloquialism can be allowed in spoken grammar, breaking of strict grammar rules such as excluding prepositions in beginning a sentence is included in spoken grammar. So of course, that means that it is more dynamic and immediate. Alright? Therefore, the speaker may commit many grammatical errors that can never be passable and acceptable in written grammar. Alright? So now let's proceed with grammatical assessment. So how are we going to assess grammar? So according to this, assessment grammar is a fundamental aspect of teaching that helps, okay, determine student proficiency in language. So it can be used to help identify the strengths and weaknesses of learners. Of course, because upon simple construction of a sentence, okay, even if we are just talking with a friend, with a teacher, or with someone else, okay, we can assess that that person who is talking is grammarian or is good in speaking, okay, or is good in sentence construction if we observe that or we assess that the subject and verb, okay, tally, okay, and of course, so assessment has to be used, all right, constantly to determine how well students are comprehending the materials that have been covered. And of course, assessment of grammatical ability is characterizing proficiency in different levels and context. All right. So I hope that you learned a lot, or I mean, you at least may reread it or re-listen to, all right, so that you may get much ideas. Okay, so walk the extra mile. Of course, we have to assess. Okay, your uh, all right, so you are going to have a reflection in regards to knowing the rule of different terms and concepts in managing, implementing standards-based grammar. And of course, as a future teacher, okay, why you need those terms and concepts in managing and implementing standards-based grammar. Okay, so you are just going to continue doing such activity. All right. So again, thank you so much for listening and viewing this lesson. I hope that at least you gained something, okay, or you learned further, okay, from the things that you already know. Okay, so again, this is Mom Earl, and thank you so much for listening.